Welcome back to Whitt Acres. Today we're setting up the most important tank in the new fish room. Last video we left off getting this 110 gallon tank with the new turtles. I have the turtles here in the temporary tub. They still have their basking lamp. I did add some duckweed and salvia minima in here just to help filter the water and to give them a little bit of coverage that they feel like they can swim under. They're both in the back corner there. You can't really see them, but they are big turtles. They're both adult red-eared sliders, and they're still trying to get comfortable after their big move. Hump up. At the end of last video, we finished resealing this tank, so we have a nice seal all the way around, and you can see that I already started testing the water. I made a short video for the water test, and if you saw that, you know we did have a leak. I left the water level above halfway because I want to continue to test the seal all the way around just in case it has a slow leak, but it spent the last 24 hours like this and we're still good, so I'm happy with the seams around all the edges, but where we had the leak was in the holes in the back. I used some scrap pieces of the plastic carding that I had for the lid on the 75 gallon, and I just siliconed them over the hole, and then I siliconed the hole shut as well. But for these two pipe fittings, I just filled the inside with silicone. Where the leak came from is from this pipe fitting being cracked, and it's actually chipped off on this end, so it leaked around the ring of the pipe. So I scraped off any old silicone around the outside, and I resealed both of those rings, and I also siliconed the ring on the outside of the tank as well. And it's almost been 24 hours since I did that, so I should be able to do another test fill today. But to get into today's video, we're going to be setting up a quarantine tank. That's going to be the most important tank in the fish room, so we can make sure all the fish that we get are healthy before mixing them into my other tanks. I have a 20 gallon tank that I'm going to be setting up underneath my 29 gallon tank, which has my angelfish scar in it, and I have just enough space on the shelf underneath to fit the 20 gallon tank. At the bottom of this stand is actually where I keep Echo's food bowl, so this is where he eats, and this is kind of the center point of the room. This 29 gallon tank with Scar the angelfish in it is actually the first aquarium I've ever set up, and I am planning on doing a rescape on this tank and the other tanks that I already have set up, but I want to get all these new tanks in place first. This tank's a little over a year old, and it's been really fun to watch it cycle. It actually went through many phases of different algae attacks. It had some blackbeard algae, it had some green hair algae, it also has this algae that's growing now on the glass. But the water's still good in there. We have the angelfish as well as 2 corydoras and a mystery snail, and there is some pond snails that are going around in there since I added the last plant. This Amazon sword in the center is coming back very well. For a while, many months, it was covered with blackbeard algae, but now it's actually starting to come out and look really green and healthy. I added a small hornwort plant, a vallisneria from the betta bowl, and there is a java fern back there. And I also have a pothos growing out of the top. So since the plants didn't take off like I originally planned, I do want to switch up the aquascape at this point, but I'm hoping I don't disturb too much because this is a very low maintenance tank. I don't have to do much but top off the water. But we'll get to the rescape videos. We're going to be setting up a new tank in this one. This is going to be the quarantine tank. I probably will be changing this tank into a grow out tank for baby fry, but I do want to keep it as a quarantine tank to start off the fish room here. I've been really tempted to get some new fish, but I've been holding off till I get some of these tanks set up. We are setting up all the tanks in here with a deep substrate method, but since this is going to be the quarantine tank, I'm not going to have a deep substrate with plants in there because whenever you have any fish that need medication, the medications or the aquarium salt can kill the plants. So the setup on this tank is going to be more simple. We're going to go with a gravel base because the sand base can harbor more parasites, and since we're not doing a full ecosystem in this tank, we're not going to have everything else in the ecosystem to keep the parasites in check. So we don't want to have that in this tank. And I'm also going to be adding some aquarium structure, some fake aquarium structure and fake plants, because I don't want any real plants, because if we have to add any medication or aquarium salt, it can kill the plants and lose all my progress. So we're going to go with fake plants, and I'm also going to go with fake structure, maybe some real rocks, but I'm not going to be using any wood because I don't want any of the medication that I might use to get sucked into it and then leach out for the next batch of fish. I have a bunch of materials and stones and aquarium decor that I can use here that I cleaned up from the mini ponds. Like I said, I might end up switching this tank into a grow out tank, and at that point we'll put in the deep substrate and plants. But for right now, while we're building the new fish room, I need a quarantine tank that I can keep an eye on new fish and see if they have any issues. This is all gravel that I pulled out of the bog filter that I had the cichlid pond on. It's all various sizes, so I think it'll make a nice base. Up. What do you think? Yeah? Yeah? All right, now we need some structure. Structure bucket. Now I don't want to go too much with the structure. I want to keep it relatively simple, just a couple hiding spots, but I think I could definitely use a plant or two in there. Jump up. So I always keep my old supplies. Gotta be stuff in here I can use. Oh, and maybe that. Alright, I think we made a pretty full setup here. We have some plants in there, we have a cave here made out of a lighthouse, we have a cave underneath the rocks, and then we have a cave inside that log structure as well. There's multiple plants here of some different textures, and then in this back corner I'm going to be putting a sponge filter. We have a few different plants in here, some different textures and colors. And I didn't get an aquarium background for this tank. If you can see back there, I'm actually using an old painting. That was actually a TV dinner tray that was a painting. It has a red barn on there, kind of a creek running through it and some trees. I thought it was a nice painting and it fit this 20 gallon pretty well, so I threw it back there and I like it. It's the same one I had on this tank when I had the silver dollars in it, so I just kept it on this tank. But now this tank is all set up and ready for water. Alright, we're gonna fill it up with a hose here. Just try and wedge it in there so the hose doesn't pop out. You hold the hose, pup, I'll turn the water on. And for the sponge filter, I have one soaking in here in the guppy breeding pond. So I'm just going to pull this sponge out and throw an air stone in it. And that's going to be my sponge filter. Come on, come here. There we are. Alright, I got it running back there. I put a rock on it just to keep it down. And as you can see, I didn't fill the water level up all the way. For a quarantine tank, I really don't need 20 gallons of water in there. If I end up having to treat it with any medication or salt, then I'm just going to have to use more to treat that volume of water. So I'm going to keep this tank with about 10 gallons of water in it just like it is. And that way, if I do get any creatures that want to come up and surface, they have a little surface. I have a small Hydra heater I'm going to put in there. It is a little bit corroded, but it was working fine when I unplugged it. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on this heater, but I think it should be enough to heat this tank with the water level down like it is. And with the heater in the back there, we are all set up with a fully operational aquarium. And since I added this sponge filter that's already been in a seasoned tank, this should be able to hold fish already. If you have any ideas on what might make a good addition to the fish room, make sure to leave a comment down below. I know I'll definitely be checking out the tanks next time I'm at the pet store. Even though this tank isn't like my other tanks where I have deep substrate, live plants, and an operating ecosystem, there's just something about filling up a glass box with water that makes it look good. Now since I can't add any plants into the scape because they might get affected by medications that I might have to use, I'm going to use some terrestrial plants that I can pull out if I do have to use some medication. This pothos is already starting to root out, so it'll start sucking out nutrients. So putting a plant in like this will help filter the water, and if I need to medicate, I can always pull it out first. And it won't hurt to add some of this salvia minima from the betta bowl. Just take a hand scoop right there, and there we are. Gorgeous. And look, we have our first inhabitant, a little pond snail that hitchhiked on the floating plants. Let me know what you think of the tank down below and what you think the first thing we should put in it is. Hop pop. Yeah, you ready for dinner, bud? Now you get dinner and a show. And before we finish the video today, I do want to do another test fill on the 110 gallon and see if these holes are finally sealed. I was just about to fill this up and test those holes when I remembered that I fixed that silicone last night, so it hasn't quite been 24 hours yet. I'm going to give it a few more hours before I test fill. And I'm not quite ready to set up this 55 gallon tank yet, but I might put the background on. This did come in the mail, so I might throw this on. That way I can get this tank up off the ground and onto the shelf in position. It's been taking up way too much floor space, and I just need to get that one step done to get it up out of the way. I'm not sure if I even remember what this background looks like. It took a couple weeks to even show up, but it does have a lot better packaging than the last background I got. At least it's rolled up so it doesn't have any creases from the folds. How's this attach? Not entirely sure how this is going to attach. Is the whole thing sticky? I don't feel 2 layers. Do I have to stick this on myself? I might have to glue this on myself. It didn't give me any adhesive. That's strange. I think this is going to be a nice background though. It gives a lot of depth. Alright, we got the 55 up on the big rack just below the 75 gallon. I'm not planning on scaping this right away, so I just wanted to get it up off the floor so I had space to work in here. Since we already have the turtles, I'll probably go ahead and finish this 110 gallon first, because everything I'm planning on putting in this 55 gallon is going to be new. The turtles are being real shy, mostly just staying back there in the dark. I do see them come up here and bask a little bit, but whenever I come over, they all run to the back. There's been times I have to remind myself that we have critters over here because I haven't had anything on this side of the room for a little bit, so whenever I hear a noise come from over here, I have to remind myself, we have turtles. I have had to come in here multiple times and rearrange the rocks already because they think there's a better spot for them. So I'm going to have to do some planning and make a nice strong sturdy structure that they can't knock over whenever we scape this 110. But it is dark outside, so it's time to do another test fill. Just the slow drip still coming out of the threads of the fitting here somehow. I thought I sealed that up well enough this time, but I'm gonna have to scrape all that old silicone off and now try and seal it again. This is the 4th new tank that we set up in the fish room, and I have 3 other ones that we're gonna be rescaping, as well as the 110 gallon and the 55 gallon that we still have to set up, and this 55 that I still have to fix, and then we have to find a spot for it. Well, we're not quite done fixing this 110, but that's gonna be all for this one. If you wanna keep following along with everything here at Whitt Acres, make sure to subscribe down below, hit that like button before you leave, and you can see me and Echo on the next one. Thanks for watching.